Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tarot Art Symposium. My name is Anna Torian, and today we have a special guest. She is a new tarot artist. Her name is Samantha Gravis. She's joining us today, and well, I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Samantha Gravis. I go by Sammy Jo. I am a classically trained artist. I have a fine arts degree from Idaho State University. Most of what I love to do is painting and drawing and sculpting, but I also am a web and graphic designer. And so, yeah, it's kind of a cool mix of two worlds of art and design. So again, like I said, I like to paint and draw. Oil painting is kind of my forte, but really kind of any paint. I've been drawing and painting since I was a little kid. So that's kind of my passion. I kind of I'm more drawn towards the macabre. So things that are a little bit more taboo, a little bit darker imagery and stuff like that, or kind of fantasy type stuff. I do sculpting, metal sculpting, pouring metal and welding. And
wow, I've never done that. That seems very intense. I have never had to deal with metal. I find it interesting. I've always wanted to try it, but I've never had the guts to do it.
Right. It's so fun. And it's when I got my degree, it was just one of the required classes and I took it and I loved it. So I also make jewelry. I do wire wrapping, just kind of a creative. And I was really interested in graphic and web design when I was in college as well. So I did some of those classes and that's kind of what I do. I just try and be a creative all around.
And now you've created your first tarot deck called the Source Tarot.
Yes.
And I've seen it online. I think it's a very beautiful, unique deck. And I was just wondering, how did you come to decide to do tarot? And, how long have you been working on it?
Yeah. Okay. So I have been reading tarot since I was 13. I got my first deck. And as far as coming across like working on a tarot deck, I've been wanting to for a really long time kind of create my own cards. And it never really was like the forefront of a drive for me. And then I sat down one day and I actually started working on a different deck, drawing, and I could show you some pictures of that.
Oh, sure.
So I'm working on one that I'm drawing, but then I've also been kind of taking some graphic design kind of classes, just kind of like playing around with some different techniques and stuff. So, as I was working on, the drawing one, which just a couple of images.
Is that ink or
it is pencil and colored pencil and ink.
Color pencil.
Yeah. And
well, that's pretty cool.
Well, thank you. So I started working on this and I was like, that's great. And then the ideas just kind of started coming to me as I was taking some of these classes. And I was like, oh, that would be a really cool technique for this card. And the first card I created was the World card. And I was like, it's really cool. And then I was like, this would be really cool. I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to keep designing this deck. And so, yeah, it kind of just took off from there.
So when did you start working on it?
In October of last year.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
very, like, not even a year. That's a big deal. You
Yeah.
finished all your illustrations.
Yes, all of the illustrations are finished. Once I got started with it, I just ran with it. And so for the past year, I've been kind of working for myself at home as a graphic and web designer. And so working from home kind of allowed me to have a lot of time to spend on these. And when I wasn't working on projects for other people, I was really just working on these cards. And so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like it took me long, but months is, it's a long time when you're creating something. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can definitely relate.
yeah.
But I looked at your deck, and like I said, I've seen it online because you did do a Kickstarter, and I know you're relaunching the Kickstarter again. And I thought it was very interesting because you're using a lot of photography, and it has like this double exposure technique to it,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah, absolutely spot on. A lot of it is double exposure. I also did kind of like a newspaper print overlay of the main subjects. So a lot of people have kind of commented that it looks a little pixelated. And if you actually kind of go in and look, it's words, it kind of is a newspaper layout print. So that was kind of the drive, I guess, behind the source tarot, is kind of like, where do we find our source? Kind of this double entendre of news media and source information when it comes to that. And then, as readers, as people who divine, where do we get our information? What is our source? Who is our source? What are we taking as information that is viable to pass on, or take in to help us with our life path? So
yeah, that makes sense. Tarot always has like a very, the source of it is deep and is very, regardless of how many decks are being created, they all have at their core this very timeless message throughout it.
yeah.
So that's pretty nice. Can I ask you, like, in terms of your process, like, how do you go about doing? Do you shoot the images? What's your
So
process?
most of the images that I used are stock photos that I found online. As a graphic designer, a lot of times you will kind of go to stock footage to create anything, even for like a client, because it does take a lot of time to go and take your own images. However, I personally, I also do photography. So if I could have found enough people to take pictures of for this deck, I definitely would have. So I found the stock photos, and then I just kind of like take it into, my design programs, and play. Like I said, had been kind of taking some classes on some techniques. So I just started kind of putting the techniques together, doing the double exposure, and kind of just coming out with those things. I through this, I have got commissioned to do our work for another deck. And fortunately enough for us, she's kind of reached out to her community, and we have a lot of people who have volunteered photographs for this project. So her project will be a little bit more personalized as far as photography of like real subjects go.
So you'll be having 2 decks.
I hope to have tons of decks. It's actually kind of a great process. It's really satisfying to start somewhere and then kind of like have a finishing point. There's the 78 cards. Again, I'm still working on the one that I'm drawing. So I'm hoping to have that one done by the end of the year. the tarot deck that I'm doing for this other lady, and I have a couple of ideas for some oracle decks that I want to do. So hopefully it'll be kind of, it's a really cool and interesting way to get my artwork seen too. You know, like I said, I'm an artist, and so I know nowadays it's, you know, people have kind of moved away from like the traditional gallery thing, and I think that this is a really cool and interesting way to get my art out there.
Yeah, there's really there's something to be said about applying your art to something that people can afford also and that are interested in, because you know, nowadays people don't tend to spend thousands of dollars on just one painting. It's more like how you apply it. But how did you, like, you said you started in October, and at one point did you realize, oh my gosh, I'm gonna make this deck, I'm gonna be done with the deck, I'm gonna publish a deck? So did you like know from the beginning that you were gonna get to that point, or it was just more like a,
like I said, the world card was the first one that I did, and I honestly didn't really kind of go into it thinking that I was building a tarot deck. But then after the image was finished, I was like, oh, this would be a perfect world card. And then I was like, oh, I should keep creating these. I mean, like I've kind of said before, like creating a deck had always been kind of something that I'd wanted to do. And as a reader, it's kind of a passion of mine. So yeah, after that first card, it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And I still don't think that it still kind of really hasn't like sunk in fully that, oh, I'm creating a tarot deck. You know, I think once it's, you know, like fully printed and I have kind of like, and I have the, you know, like the first deck that's like exactly how it's going to be in my hands, I think that's when I'll be like, oh yeah, I created this tarot deck, you know. Yeah.
can you show us some of the images from the source tarot, like if you have any proofs, or just
so I have some one sheets that I've had printed. I'm just kind of going through the process of seeing like how the ink is going to come out. You always, as a graphic designer, you always want to make sure that like your images aren't going to be too dark and all that kind of stuff. So I do have some one sheets that I've had printed out. So far I'm definitely liking the colors. Some of the blacks are a little black for me. I've kind of gone in and lightened them up just a little bit, but so far I'm feeling like it's coming out pretty well. And, you know, the printer that I'm working with for the cards are going to be doing, what is the process that they said? Oh, it's not digital print.
it'll come to you. It'll pop in your head.
So their process is a little bit different. So with digital print, things are always going to come out a little bit darker. So that's what these are. So I'm not fiddling with it too much because I do know that the process is different, and the true colors are going to come out more with the printing process that I'm having done, rather than like
they look very beautiful. I love them.
Thank you.
And it's great because you have this background of graphic design, and you know the printing process, which I think is an advantage because a lot of artists, like illustrators, really don't have necessarily that experience. I think that working in graphic design and web design gives you a little bit of an in, which comes in handy, especially when you'll be dealing with printers and yeah. Now you are doing a Kickstarter, so I'm just telling people that I will be putting down a link in the description to the Kickstarter so they can go see more images. And also on your website, I believe you have, they can see the suits and what it looks like as a whole. how have you found the Kickstarter experience? This is your first Kickstarter, so.
Yeah, so I am relaunching. Actually, I've already relaunched. It's been up for 5 days now. Um, and I have extended the time period. I've never done crowdfunding or anything like that before, but the printer I am working with is overseas, and so it's kind of a hefty cost. And I just kind of knew in order to really get this deck like seen and out there, I would have to, you know, do a crowdfunding, and with a little bit of research, I found that, you know, people have had some luck with that. My first attempt was not successful. It definitely didn't reach its goal. It was close, but didn't get completely there. So I did talk to a few people who had done some Kickstarters. I talked to a few people who had their Kickstarters go and be successful the first time. And then I talked to some people who had theirs be successful the second time. And so I kind of took some information from both of those places and decided, you know, here's how I'm going to do mine. All of the backers from the first attempt have been so amazing and so kind, and and without me even knowing, like, are sharing with people and places that I was like, whoa, wait, what? Like, that you guys shared my tarot deck. That's awesome. And so a lot of people sharing it on Instagram. I had a couple of people submit it for a few YouTube reviewers that do a lot of like either tarot deck Kickstarter reviews or just Kickstarter reviews of projects. And so that's been pretty cool. I feel like you know, I'm learning as I'm going on this process. And so it's been really nice to have the support of the backers that I do. And I feel like it's going to be really because of them that this campaign kind of is successful this time.
Yeah, I've seen your images actually for a couple of Facebook groups, tarot Facebook groups. So people are definitely sharing. I know I shared your work because I found it very interesting. And I think it, you know, it's a process. The more people get to know you, the more, you know, more support you would get. How do you find in terms like, well, you're dealing, you know, printers, so I think that helps you. Do you have a printer in mind already for your deck that you?
I do. I do have a printer. I reached out before I started the process of the Kickstarters. I reached out to a tarot creator who I purchased some of her decks through Kickstarter at one point, and kind of asked her where she got her printing done. And I mean, it's been good process. I understand that, like, you know, you got to pay up front for a lot of things and that kind of stuff, but I'd really love to like actually just get a prototype of the type, you know, the process of printing that they're doing, just to see. But other than that, the woman that I'm working with is she's on top of it. Like you know, she gets a hold of me if she hasn't heard from me for a while. She's like, hey, what's going on? And we're constantly in communication, which I feel like is super important. You know, just that I make sure that they're kind of still kind of on my side and have my back. And she's just been really lovely through everything. I've sent her the images, and she's, you know, has told me like, oh, there might kind of be a little bit of an issue with the coloring on this one. So maybe, you know, so it's been kind of a good process of going back and forth and talking to somebody who works at the printer. And
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, especially like, I mean, I have not done a Kickstarter. I usually do pre-orders for myself. It's kind of like a Kickstarter. People will, you know, donate their money, they expect the deck, and then how many people purchase the deck, and pre-orders, that's how many decks you print.
Mhm.
But the problem is if you're going with a larger printer, they will only take orders like in the thousands. So there's that, issue. But there is a stress, I think, having, people's monies and you have to send it to a printer and you're pretty much, if it doesn't, if there's any issue, you have to be on top of it. So
Absolutely.
you have a timeline scheduled. I know people usually want to know, do you have a timeline in terms of, so assuming that your Kickstarter will be successful, you already have a printer and your deck is finished, right?
Mhm.
You have a guidebook that you're going to be
do.
included.
Yeah, I'm still working on the guidebook. Just little things here and there. There's not a lot that needs to be done with that. Again, after a lot of research about people doing Kickstarter campaigns, I decided to, give the out date of October, just in case there ends up being any issues or anything. I want people to be able to expect it when they can expect it, and I felt like that gave me enough time. And if it comes out earlier, then people will be happy that it's out earlier. Oh, I got my deck early. So, and then not try and push the date too close, so that if it wasn't out until October, people wouldn't be upset.
That's smart. Yeah, you want to err on the side of caution. You don't want to give a timeline that's too soon and then something happens so, with the shipping issues that have been happening, there is that also to consider.
Yeah, that was one thing that a lot of people suggested, like especially right now and with all the shipping and everything still kind of going on with COVID and all of the issues that have been happening in the world. They were just kind of like, set it out just a couple more months. Again, if it comes sooner, great, and people can have their product sooner. But if not, then it's a reasonable timeline.
And let me ask, are you planning at all in, trying to go through also a publisher, or are you planning on just being an indie deck creator?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stick with being an indie deck creator for now. Maybe in the future with a different deck, I might try a publisher. I guess part of the research that I did, it just doesn't seem like you get a whole lot as being the creator of the deck when you go through a publisher. So, gotta stay true to my artist roots and do it my own, and be accredited for my work and not just giving all my money away.
Yeah, I think if you find a good publisher, they will work with you and actually like take suggestions. I think it depends on the publisher that you eventually go with, because some will make changes that will drastically, change your deck. And others will say, hey, what do you think of this? Do you want this? So there is that. In terms of the financial aspect, you're right. The benefits, I think, are that you get to reach more people, which is very hard. There's only so many, you're probably going to be shipping yourself, right? All your decks.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
if you think about it, if you sell 5,000 decks, more, you'd be having to ship by yourself, which is a lot. So in that aspect, it's so much easier. But yeah, there is something to be said about the having it close, because it's your baby, right? It's like you've worked so hard on it, and it's hard to let it go. Even into
Absolutely.
the world, when you send it out, you'll see, like when you send the first decks, it's like you're sending off your little ship into the world.
Yeah. And it is a little daunting of a thought to think about, gosh, even 100 decks. I'm like, whoa, that's going to be a lot of decks to ship out. But I think that there's something to be said for having that personal touch though too, of like getting it and kind of having it in my own energy, even to like send it out and to people. I'm very much adamant about cleansing all of my my magical tools and my divination tools, and so I kind of just send some of my energy with them and have that on my decks. And so I think there is kind of something to be said for that as well.
Yeah, that's pretty neat that you're doing your own cleansing of, it's and that you read tarot, because a lot of tarot artists, not everybody can read the tarot, which is, I've seen some beautiful decks and the artists didn't know how to read. But I do think that it helps you. I think it helps as the person creating it,
Yeah.
to know to be a reader at the same time, so yeah. In terms of challenges that you've had with the creation process of the deck, have you had any challenges so far that you were like,
Yeah, I think the most challenging part for me so far has been writing the guidebook. Having to sit with every card, and a lot of what this deck is about is kind of intuitive reading. The guidebook is there to help if you're called to the guidebook, but I really want this deck to be something where people kind of like look at the imagery and kind of feel it out. So as much as I look at these cards and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is what comes to my mind and I'm putting it down on paper, I'm also trying to step back just a little bit and be like, okay, how can I encourage people, even through the guidebook, to feel into it and feel into the cards and really read the messages that are coming to them first, before they kind of go to this. Now, like I said, if you're guided to the book and that's the message you need to read. So it's kind of been this delicate balance of, I look at these cards and I'm like, hey, this is what it says, and this is the interpretation, and this is how the card needs to be read. But then also kind of being like, but I really want you to feel this card. And so that's kind of been the hardest thing for me is the guidebook so far.
yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, the art part is the easy part. The writing, if you're not a writer, but a natural writer, it's a little scary. I find it scary because
Yeah.
you have to always double check what your spelling and all, and the grammar structure, and even if it gets edited, I think that it's a and I'm sure for writers it's the same. Like if a writer, who's going towards illustrating, and you're
Absolutely.
technically a writer, there probably is some tension and stress in that aspect. So yeah, so you do have so you technically have 2 more decks in the future that you've already kind of working on, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a name for them yet, or is that like you haven't decided?
Okay, well, the one that I'm working on that's just completely myself, I don't have a name for that one yet. I think that will kind of come along. The name for the Source Tarot didn't actually come along until I was almost finished with all the illustrations. So, but again, I said I got commissioned to do the artwork for a deck for somebody else. And they do have a title to theirs. It's a Chaos Magician's Journey Through the Tarot. And we are currently working on that right now. She's plugging away at the book, and I am going through and kind of figuring out my process right now for each card. But I've tentatively gotten about 3 cards done there. So we just barely started working on this project about it's been probably a month now. So
Okay, so you still have a long time to
Yeah.
tackle that. And chaos magic is, I know there's a lot of people that are interested in that. So I'm sure your title will spark some interest there, and they'll be like, "Ooh, what is that?"
Yeah.
Let me ask, in terms of your personal preference, what's your favorite suit that you've illustrated? So which one are you more connected to?
My favorite one. I really enjoyed the Major Arcana, just because there was a lot of freedom there. If you look at my deck, I did try and kind of color coordinate the suits.
I saw that they're each have like different, like an overall chromatic scheme. There's like a certain, yeah, I did notice that.
So the Major Arcana I didn't really do that with, I you know, because they're just so different, and it's not. So I really enjoyed making those. You know, it's funny because I think I thought about that. I thought about that during the process. Like, I started with the wands, and I was really into making the wands. And then once I started on the cups, I was like, oh no, this is my favorite suit. And I'm really enjoying this. And then I got into the swords, and like kind of the same thing. If I had to choose, I would probably say I really enjoyed the cups suit, but the cup in my deck was actually a friend of mine was doing some work at her uncle's house, and he had these really amazing looking chalices, and so I actually took pictures of those, and that's what I used for the cup. And so on a personal level, I think that that's my favorite suit just because of that little cup.
And your least favorite?
I would say my least favorite was the swords.
Oh.
Again, if I had to choose.
You hit me. Swords is my favorite.
You know, and like I said, if I had to choose, I would probably say the swords, just because I guess kind of like really having to spend time on each card in each suit, I really kind of realized how many very painful cards there are in the sword suit. And so, but to be completely honest with you, if we're talking about like any card in the deck, the very last card I did was the devil, and I had such a hard time putting that one together. I don't know why. I don't know why I couldn't connect with the imagery.
Because it was the last card.
Right. Well,
I always have issues with the last card, because it's like, I know everything is done and I just have one more. And when it's the last one, a lot of times I have to scrap it and start over. And it's almost like, it's like nanny, you can't finish me. So yeah. It's always a struggle.
I started, you know, like I said, I started, the world card came out, and I did all of the Major Arcana, and the devil card, I got to that and I got stuck. So I was like, okay, move on. Like, my artist brain and kind of my process on how I get past a hump was like, okay, move on to the next one. And then I kept trying to come back to it. And I mean, I probably went through 10, 15 different designs before I actually found the one. And I was like, maybe there's something to that. Like, maybe there's some work I need to do internally with like the devil card. Something's coming up I need to release or something, because it was a hard one for me to get done. So
if you hear background noise, those are my kids that are running back and forth. They're like,
I was wondering if you could hear my cat meowing.
I know. It's almost like a drum in the background. So I keep muting myself, hoping that, you know, people won't think that I have like drums. Oh, so let me ask you, I know you have an Instagram account. You are on Instagram, and obviously, you know, you're comfortable to some degree to social media. Did you become more involved with social media once you started creating the deck, or have you, and how do you find it? I mean, in terms of response from people and engagement for this deck.
Right. So Instagram, yes. I had just kind of barely started my company is Creative Tap Studio. And I just barely started the Instagram account right before I kind of finished the deck and came out with the deck. So I was mostly on Facebook. And throughout my creative process on Facebook, I was kind of posting my cards and that kind of stuff. You know, things have changed so much with social media and algorithms. And if you're not posting 80 million times a day and responding to everything, then your algorithms drop and people might not see your stuff. So I have had a better response on Instagram, posting my stuff. You know, for me, it's like, it is kind of rough because I'm a web designer, I'm a graphic designer. I do have clients that I work for. And now again, I do have a new job where I'm doing graphic and web design. And so like social media is kind of like the last thing on my plate. Although I did work for an advertising agency and I do understand how important it is, but you know, doing that kind of constant scheduling of, oh, I'm going to post this many posts a day and boosting posts and paying for paid ads. I mean, that can get super expensive. So really my saving grace has been the people who have followed me, people like you who have shared the project, and people who like it and have just kind of been resharing some of my posts and putting it out there. But I mean, that's what social media is, right? It's kind of like a networking tool. So I've been lucky enough to kind of find people who have been like, I love this deck and I really hope, I want to see it successful. I want it. And so it's been kind of a love-hate relationship with me in social media. So
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. That algorithm really is an interesting beast, you know. If you post too much, people get annoyed. If you don't post, then people won't see your stuff when you post. So it's like a very it's a hit or a miss sometimes with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, you know, and for me it's kind of a strange beast as well, because you know, I'm not posting about my tarot deck as like an individual person. I'm posting about it on my business page, which I decided very early on that I didn't. There were kind of some people who were like, maybe you should make another page for just your tarot. And my thing is that these two things go hand in hand for me. I'm a creator. And so I'm trying to post like jobs that I've been doing and this other work that I can do. You know, eventually my whole goal is to have people be like, oh, I love her artwork. I want to collaborate with her on, you know, I want her to do my website. I want her to do these graphic things for me. So it's kind of another kind of delicate balance of, you know, posting the work that I'm doing, plus also kind of being a tarot deck designer, and how can I make those cohesive and make them work without one kind of overshadowing the other. Again, Instagram was kind of like, I started that and I just started posting about the tarot. I think I've got a couple of things in there for my graphic design stuff, but yeah, Instagram has kind of been my go-to.
Well, as an artist, I mean, you do, you know, even if you're doing, well, at least that's my personal experience is that your style is your style, right? So if you're painting or you're sculpting or you're doing logo design, even though they're different mediums, I think that people can kind of tell that it's you and your style, you know, even though it's different mediums, there's something to be said about each artist having a uniqueness to it. So it makes sense that you want to incorporate all, you know, and keep it in the sense that you are an artist that can do all these things. And there is something that to be said, because they keep trying to pigeonhole people, right? You have to make an account for your deck, an account for your paintings, an account for your business. So it's like separating, and as an individual, you sometimes can't function in these it's almost like a little drawers, right? So I understand where you're coming from, because that usually is an important step that you don't realize how important it is when you start showing your work on the internet, because then you're like, okay, so do I pose as myself? Do I create an alter ego? Do I, like, especially because, tarot, not everybody's in tarot.
Right.
And it can ostracize a group of people, but at the same time, that's who you are as an artist. And I think that it helps you spiritually also. So I think that incorporating it is the way to go, but that's just that's just me.
No, I totally agree. I did hear quite a few people say, like, do them separately. And I was just like, no, it's all my work. It's all my creation. It's all my baby. So I want it all to be in one place. And, and it, it's not like I hide my identity or anything like that. Like, if you go on Creative Tap Studio, you can see that Sammy Jo Gravis is, who runs this and who does this. So, and on Facebook, I'm cross posting between my personal account and my business account all the time. So, I just, I want it all to be kind of under one roof. I don't want it to be so obscure. And again, like you might have clients that are like, oh, she does something like that, and they would never know because it's on a different platform or it's on a different site. Or so I'm just like, no, I'm just going to put it all together. In fact, this new job that I just got, I was actually quite surprised when they pulled up my website, and the first project that they went to was my tarot deck, and so I was like, it just kind of proved to me at that time that I made the right decision of keeping them together and not separating them.
Well, when your illustrations for tarot kind of show your personal view and artistic skills, when you do, I think, a website or a logo, it's more of that they're telling you what they want. You're dealing with the client has a certain look, so you do put your views in it, but it's a more, not as personal, I guess. It would be more objective than your own personal artwork. So that's probably why they were, they're attracted, because they see, like, your true self, I guess it would be. So since you have a job on this, work, you have a day job, and then you have your tarot, how many hours a day would you say that you spent working on the deck? Like,
well, again, so I got done with all of my illustrations and stuff for the Source Tarot before I'd gotten this job. So, but I was working on my own with my own business with graphic and web design, not 8 hours a day. I didn't have enough clients to work a full 8 hours every day. With working with that, and then we're like, the deck kind of, once I started working on that, it just kind of took over all of my spare time, which I didn't. It's funny because, like, my mom was always like, you work like 15 hours a day, and I'm like, but I'm working on my tarot deck. That's not the same, because it's something I love and that I'm passionate about. And I guess that's kind of like that cliche saying of, if you can work doing something you love, you never work a day, in your life again. So, where to a lot of people, it would seem like I'm just sitting here working, like I'm sitting here creating. So yeah, I mean, there definitely were days that I would wake up at 7 and just make my coffee and start working, and work until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And then, the beauty about working for yourself, though, is that, like, if I woke up and I had a day where I was like, I'm not working today, I kind of got that freedom. So So yeah, I mean, it was kind of all over the place, but once I started doing the tarot deck, if I wasn't working on another project, even if I was like just sitting down in front of the TV or something, I had my laptop in my hands and I was working away. So a lot of time.
So in terms of your evolvement, your evolvement in your art, how do you see it moving in the future? Or do you think you're still going to be working with collage art, or do you feel like you're going to be going back to more traditional art, like in terms of, you did mention Oracle potentially, and
Yeah, I think it's just gonna, the evolution of it is just gonna be more and more of a combination of all of it. The deck that I'm working on for the other woman, it's kind of a collage graphic design deck like mine. But then I did show you the images of the drawing deck that I'm doing. I have some ideas for a collaboration on an oracle deck that's plant-based with a friend of mine, and that's going to be more watercolor. Just kind of trying to touch on the spectrum of all of my creative processes and what I can do. I don't really want to limit myself, because I just feel like continuing to work on these projects and all of the different mediums will just enhance my abilities to do all of that kind of work. I'm really, right now, my brain and my mind is really super into this graphic design collage work. And so I'm kind of like in a space where I'm challenging myself to like be the best, and just really refine the techniques and really get to a place where I can put together these compilations and have them look super rad. And but the same thing with my drawing and my painting and my art is just just trying to use as many of my talents as I can to keep creating, is kind of where I'm at. And maybe eventually someday just like all of it put together, maybe
everything all in one three-dimensional deck somehow. Sculpting and painting and everything together. That'd be cool. That would be an interesting thing. A tarot deck that you can actually feel in your hands as you're reading.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's a good idea. Okay, my brain's working now.
So who would you say are the artists that inspired you, and one of your favorite artists? Like who are they?
I have a lot. I have a lot of really like favorite, like people just who have just inspired me throughout pretty much my entire artistic career. Again, like I said, I kind of drawn more to like macabre, darker sort of stuff. So television and movie creators are huge for me. I love Quentin Tarantino. I'm a really huge fan of Tim Burton's stuff. Guillermo del Toro, so I'm super into horror, and I love just kind of like the feeling of all of his movies. As far as like traditional artists go, I really love like surrealism, Salvador Dali, he's one of my favorites. A lot of kind of some of the stuff that I do as far as drawing and painting kind of go more towards like a surrealist type of feel. I love Neil Gaiman. He's incredible, super big comic book nerd. So, just anything there. I really love retro art as well. So I'm a huge fan of Andy Warhol. I do have a couple of artists that I've kind of found online recently. There is one girl, and I can never remember her name, and she just does these portrait style fantasy drawings that are just beyond incredible. I don't even know what to say about them. I did kind of make a little list. One artist that I've really been drawn to recently is named Sean Koss. I'm not really sure how big he is, but he's always doing sales on his prints, and I just love his stuff. I think he does mostly like drawing pad drawings and that kind of stuff, but love his stuff. Great. I am not really sure how to say this woman's name, but a cute Adagdu. I don't know how to say her last name, but
I'll have to like ask you how to write it and I'll look it up.
yeah, she's great. Hers is kind of a little bit more like fantasy portrait type stuff, a little bit more on the graphic design side of stuff, but and then also a lot of like really big Japanese influences. Like I really love the Ghibli studio movies. So I don't know if you've ever seen any of those, but they're fantastic, and I love all the animation that goes into them. So I did, kind of a little all over the place with a lot of things, but
That's good because you get a lot of like inspiration from different areas.
Yeah.
I think it makes you a more rounded artist if you get to, because now, we don't, there's still galleries, you can go to galleries, but it's not as, everything is again, like online you see. And so I think the more that you're exposed in terms of new artists, it really helps. So yeah, I do want to ask you, because we're almost at the end, for people that are interested in purchasing your deck, as we mentioned, the Kickstarter is still up. Till when, how long is it going to be going? Like, is it this month or are you extending it for longer?
Yeah, so I did extend it for 60 days. So it's been up for 5 days so far. I did extend it for the 60 days. I felt like my first one, if I would have just had like another 10 days, I probably would have hit my goal. So I'm just leaving it up for a little bit longer. I do understand that this time of year is a little rough. People are really taking a look at their finances, and it's tax season and all that kind of stuff. So I want people, especially if they're interested or following the project, to be able to kind of come back. I did actually have quite a few people who had been following the first Kickstarter who ended up messaging me like 2 days after it ended and was like, "Oh no, what happened? It's gone." And I was like, yeah, they're only up for 30 days. So I just was kind of like, give people a little bit of a grace period. I know, in my mind, it's like, I'll find projects and stuff that I'm like, oh, that's super cool. And I'll like, put it in a cart, or I'll follow it, and then I'll miss the emails or something will happen. And then I'll come back like one day, I'll just be like, oh yeah, what about that one thing that I was following that I really wanted? So I get it. I get kind of how some of these projects and some of these things can fall at the wayside. Life happens. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to give people a little bit more time to.
That's good. I think that's a good idea, good strategy, because sometimes it does need a little more time. In terms of advice for our viewers who are interested in creating their deck and their new artists, you are right now experiencing it. So what advice do you have that you wish you knew beforehand?
How much time and dedication it does take. I think after the first attempt failed for me on Kickstarter, it would have been really easy. And I think it is easy for a lot of people to kind of give up. Don't give up. You'll find your group of people who just like really love your project, and those people will definitely help. One thing that I might suggest before you actually launch the Kickstarter though is, and I read a lot about this before I launched mine, but was to kind of try and get a little bit of a following. However, most of my following came from Kickstarter. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there for me. It's like a lot of people discovered my project through Kickstarter, and that's why they're kind of still being like, oh yes, we're gonna share, and we're gonna back again, and we're gonna do all this stuff. And so, you know, once I get done with this whole project, I'll write a book on how to Kickstarter
It's a
your
good
tarot.
plan, because a lot of people want to know as far as Kickstarter. Kickstarter is like the beast that nobody wants to get close to until you really have to, you know?
Yeah.
It's a
So
scary
yeah,
idea.
it is weird how much of my following actually has come from Kickstarter. You know, I really went through some pains with like Facebook ads and advertising and trying to boost my posts, and you know, I don't really feel like I got a lot of attention that way. So you know, find your, if you have you know, people on YouTube that you watch, even tarot readers, if you have your favorite, you know, you have a tarot deck that you loved, like reach out to the creators of that deck. That's what I did, you know, to find my printer. I've reached out to a couple of different creators that of just decks that I have that I love, and you know, kind of pick their brains a little bit and ask their advice, and some of them are also helping me too. So that's another great thing. Like, don't be afraid to ask other creators, you know.
Yeah, people don't bite.
No,
Well, thank you so much, Samantha, for joining
thank
us
you.
and giving us a chance to meet you. And again, if anybody's interested in the deck, please click on the link below. I will put the Kickstarter, Samantha's webpage, and I'm sure if you have questions, you're willing to answer them, right? They can message
Absolutely.
you. And so bye, everybody, and I'll see you next time.